Thank you all for being here, making Herculean efforts despite the weather to get here on time. Thank you to the organizers for this wonderful conference. Deep gratitude to Khalid, who has been a master logistics person who has taken all kinds of last-minute requests from pesky speakers like me and made our visit very comfortable. Thank you. This is an important event, and I'm really, really happy to be participating in it. My name is Shikha Dalmia, and I'm the president of the Institute for the Study of Modern Authoritarianism. I also have a Substack publication where we are tracking the rise of global authoritarianism, especially of the populist variety, which is called the unpopulist. All the content is available for free, so please subscribe, theunpopulist.net. But if you'd like to contribute something, we will not turn you down. The topic of my talk is defending democracy by resisting the new threats of global authoritarianism. Now, over the last 250 years, liberal democracy, the golden child of the Enlightenment, has delivered unprecedented peace, prosperity, and virtually everywhere it has been embraced. Its commitment to openness, reason, science, individual freedom, free markets, toleration, pluralism, and above all, the rule-bound governance has diffused religious wars and civil strife. It has liberated those living under arbitrary and brutal feudal hierarchies, and it has lifted billions from poverty, delivering both not just material, but also moral progress. It is this stunning combination of delivery that combines both human rights progress as well as lifting, in my home country of India, about 500 billion people out of poverty, that actually allowed liberal democracy to vanquish socialism and communism in the 20th century. Yet stunningly now, merely 35 years after the communist bloc collapsed, we are in what the previous speaker pointed out was a global wave of democratic backsliding. Frank Fukuyama had declared after the Iron Curtain fell that history has ended, but here we are again facing history with a vengeance. Larry Diamond at Stanford University has pointed out that since about 2008, the world entered a democratic slump. The Arab Spring abruptly halted. Putin entrenched one-man rule and smothered Russia's democratic stirrings. Latin America struggled to restrain autocrats like Nicolas Maduro and Jair Bolsonaro, and China dashed hopes of political liberalization while extinguishing Hong Kong's thriving liberal democracy. What is even more striking is that this backsliding is now afflicting some of the most mature liberal democracies in the world, countries that we believed had institutional antibodies against democratic decay. My native country, India, has been gripped by a virulent Hindu nationalism. And my adopted country, America, is flirting dangerously with a combination of white religious nationalism, which is being fueled by very interesting, I would say, post-liberal ideologies. The United Kingdom, Hungary, Israel, the Philippines, Brazil, across the democratic world, populist strongmen have built movements claiming to speak for a monolithic people who are under siege from shadowy elites. Now, this is a critical point. Today's authoritarianism does not present itself as a revolutionary alternative to liberal democracy as socialism and communism did. It presents itself as a truer version of democracy, the voice of the real people reclaiming their rightful power that has been illicitly seized by woke progressive elites. who are concerned apparently only about religious minorities and immigrants. The true threat, as far as they are concerned, is no longer external, outside the country, it is internal. As Donald Trump told top military leaders recently, it's the enemy within the country that they have to worry about, and they'll be called upon to control and challenge. Just as socialism and communism promised prosperity but delivered deprivation, populist nationalism promises order and belonging, but it will deliver division and repression. And it does so by pretending to go after the establishment elites and those whom these elites are coddling. Now, don't get me wrong, these elites have some explaining to do. Their governing decisions haven't always been the wisest. And this is also not to deny that left-wing movements have their excesses. Robespierre's reign of terror shows us that we can never ever forget the ease with which moral fervor of good intentions can go really murderously wrong. In our times, in the name of social justice, some activists and institutions have struck a moralistic and self-righteous posture and have narrowed the circle of permissible expression. Though these tendencies towards ideological conformity are lamentable, they can be defeated by normal liberal means, and we have been doing that. But that is not what strongmen do. Why? Because progressive excesses are not the cause of strongman politics, they are the pretexts used to justify sweeping assaults on liberal polities whose commitment to pluralism and tolerate frustrate the longing for ethnic or linguistic or cultural domination. If you listen to post-liberal thinkers, it is not sufficient that Christianity in America or Hinduism in India gets the same protections as other religions from the state. They need a special status consistent with the will of the dominant majority, and that requires a strongman. That's why an autocrat like Hungary's Viktor Orban is Steve Bannon's new hero, not Churchill or Reagan. They are in disrepute now. But the populist strongmen who emerge in a democracy do not take over the reins of power through a coup. Armed thugs don't go barreling down the road to the parliament to depose a sitting government, although America came pretty close to that on January 6, 2021. They get elected, and once they are in office, they move to consolidate power by packing courts, politicizing the civil service, co-opting or intimidating the press, turning law enforcement into a partisan instrument, rewriting electoral rules so that the opposition survives in name but gets no traction. The authoritarian playbook does not involve abolishing elections because authoritarians need electoral legitimacy to justify their rule. Even Putin holds elections. They simply rig the system to give themselves a massive advantage and make it harder for opponents to defeat them. And with every electoral cycle, it becomes harder to dislodge them. Therefore, the liberal democratic resistance right now is in a race with authoritarian consolidation in many countries. It's just an open question whether they'll consolidate first or the resistance will prevail before they do. Now, the good news is that liberal democracies carry within them resources to fight back. And we are seeing glimmers of that, especially in the United States, where authoritarian consolidation is actually Trump's Operation Warp Speed. He has accomplished in the last 8 months what it took Orban and Modi 8 years to achieve. We are witnessing Illinois, which is ground zero for ISIS deportation regime. Governor Pritzker there has mounted actually a pretty powerful anti-authoritarian message, which is rooted in a deeply American vocabulary of constitutionalism, states' rights, checks and balances, pluralism. Other Democratic politicians are also getting their bearings finally. But the most important resistance comes from ordinary people. In Illinois and Chicago, neighbors have formed circles of protection around vulnerable immigrants in defiance of the state. They run errands, deliver groceries, and help immigrant families who are isolating or afraid to leave their homes. They've built rapid alert systems to warn of ICE sightings. They take personal risks, not for personal gain, but out of a moral revulsion toward state control and state overreach and concern for their neighbors and community. Here is what happens when ordinary citizens engage in principled, peaceful civil resistance. The more they resist, the more draconian and violent the authoritarian state must become to assert control. And when the conflict becomes a contest between ordinary citizens protecting their neighbors and a state forced into escalating repression, the moral authority shifts decisively towards the citizens, the resistors. Authoritarians rarely win a contest of conscience. Canada, for its part, has not experienced this depth of democratic stress, but just wait till it's our 51st state and things will change. Every democracy faces the challenge of how to respond when political entrepreneurs weaponize cultural grievance for power. And in Canada, anti-immigrant sentiment is making populist Pierre Poilievre attractive in center-right circles. And he, I understand, recently proposed to end birthright citizenship, just like Trump. The populist pandemic is sort of moving north. I hope you guys resist it. So what must defenders of liberal democracy do? First, we must form a broad coalition that cuts across the right and the left. We need to abandon our old policy disagreements and come together in the defense of core liberal values and institutions. We need to actually replace the old left-right divide with a new liberal-illiberal divide, and we need to win elections. Liberals of every stripe, whether they are progressive, centrists, classical liberals, libertarians, must recognize that authoritarianism threat is common to all of us. None of our policy victories will be enduring if a strong man can simply come and upend the liberal order at will, as we are learning in the United States. And so we must use this coalition to defeat authoritarian movements at the ballot box. But electoral victories are not enough. Every election shouldn't have existential stakes. Vigilance might be the price for liberty, but the need for constant hypervigilance is the sign of a polity in trouble. Ultimately, we will need a cultural reset, a civic re-immersion in the values of liberalism, openness, pluralism, the equal dignity of every individual. And we'll need to remind our fellow citizens that the life on the other side of liberalism is nasty, brutish, and short, as Thomas Hobbes once warned us. Liberal democracy is not self-executing. It survives because citizens choose to defend it, because they insist on living in a society where differences are resolved through persuasion, not coercion, where no group claims a monopoly on the nation, where freedom is understood not as domination, but as non-interference. In sum, to defend liberal democracy, we need principled coalitions, civic solidarity, moral clarity, and the willingness of ordinary people to speak up and stand up peacefully but firmly for one another. It's fashionable these days to say that politics isn't everything, go live your life. Trouble is, under authoritarian rule, you may want to leave politics, but politics won't leave you. The last thing you'll be able to do is live your life as you see fit. For that, you need a space around an individual that is off limits to the state unless the state has a compelling reason. So if you are in an authoritarian regime, but especially if you are in a transitioning one, resist now and resist hard.